about Whoopi Goldberg because I got so many texts this week because she attacked me the week before.
Sure.
So everybody was like, "Oh, Bill, I get you're enjoying the karma." First of all, I'm going to talk about this at the end of my show next week, teaser. But there is no fucking thing as karma, okay? Get over that.
Politics today isn't just about debates. It's a full-scale battleground where hard facts clash with rigid ideology. And at the center of the latest clash? Bill Maher, delivering a masterclass in unfiltered truth, dismantling Whoopi Goldberg's arguments with surgical precision. This wasn't just another Hollywood squabble, it was a reckoning. A reminder that flimsy narratives collapse when met with sharp wit and undeniable logic. One of the ugliest parts of America's racial history is that perspectives from black voices often differ, sometimes in ways that challenge mainstream sensibilities. Maher, known for calling out hypocrisy on both sides, took things to another level in this exchange. While Whoopi leaned on the same progressive talking points The View has championed for years, Maher came armed with brutal honesty, cutting through contradictions and exposing weak spots. The result? Whoopi visibly struggling to hold her ground, left grasping for a response. But this wasn't just a debate. It was an exposure of how out of touch elite liberal narratives have become. The polished, media-approved rhetoric that dominates mainstream news is starting to crack, revealing a stark disconnect from everyday Americans. The ones struggling to pay bills, worried about crime, and fed up with being told what they should think. "I watch your show all the time," Whoopi acknowledged. "You go after both Trump and Biden, and a lot of people aren't happy about that." Maher's response? Unapologetic. Sure, he criticizes both, but to pretend Trump and Biden are equally dangerous would be dishonest. That's the difference between scripted talking points and genuine discourse. It's clear. Progressive messaging is losing its grip. Maher didn't just challenge Whoopi, he held up a mirror to an entire belief system, exposing its cracks. This wasn't just two celebrities arguing. It was a battle between scripted narratives and inconvenient truths. And as the discussion unfolded, one thing became clear. When ideology collides with reality, reality always wins.
Part of our sorry racial history in this country is that the point of view from a black person is often going to be very different and sometimes shocking.
What lit the spark? It all started when Whoopi downplayed concerns about crime, the struggling economy, and the mounting pressure on working-class Americans. To her, these issues were just overblown talking points, exaggerated by conservatives trying to create fear. But Maher? He wasn't having it. He cut straight to the heart of the matter, reminding Whoopi, and everyone watching, that inflation, crime, and economic hardship aren't abstract political debates. These problems are real and are affecting everyday people in ways that can't be ignored. While activists sit in their echo chambers debating theoretical solutions, families are choosing between groceries and rent. Workers are struggling to keep up with rising costs. Communities are dealing with safety concerns that politicians refuse to acknowledge. This was no longer about ideology, it was about reality.
I watch your show all the time, so I know that you're a comic, but you basically go after Trump and Biden. You know, both of them. And a lot of people are not happy with you about that.
Equally.
Well, not equally, because you know that Trump is doing more dangerous.
Of course. I mean, I don't think anybody was more out front on that danger.
Whoopi's response? Nothing of substance. Instead of addressing Maher's points head-on, she did what so many political commentators do, she deflected. Rather than tackling the reality of inflation and crime, she veered into vague, rehearsed platitudes about economic policies, sidestepping the core argument entirely. Her words sounded polished, but they were detached from the struggles of real people. This moment exposed a deep divide, not just between Whoopi and Maher, but between those who speak from comfortable perches and those who actually feel the weight of these issues every day. Maher isn't the type to let weak arguments slide, and this time was no different. With his signature bluntness, he zeroed in on a glaring contradiction in Whoopi's stance. She, like many progressive elites, particularly white liberals, claims to fight for marginalized communities. But when it comes to actually listening to those communities, the cracks begin to show. Maher didn't just speculate, he backed it up with cold, hard facts. Polling data consistently shows that Black and Hispanic voters prioritize economic stability and crime over ideological battles raging on social media. While Twitter activists argue about pronouns and microaggressions, working-class families are worried about paying rent, keeping their neighborhoods safe, and putting food on the table. And yet, when faced with this reality, Whoopi wouldn't budge. Instead of acknowledging the disconnect, she doubled down, exposing just how detached her rhetoric was from the people she claims to represent.
Talking about how he was never going to give up power. Long ago, when everybody was laughing at me and said, "You smoke too much pot," and I said, "I smoke just the right amount of pot," because plainly, I was using the term slow-moving coup before he was elected the first time.
That's right.
I said, this guy is never going to concede power. It's impossible to imagine him going,
Then came the real bombshell. Maher steered the conversation into the murky waters of political hypocrisy, where double standards run deep. With a knowing smirk, he brought up the elephant in the room, Hunter Biden. The same Democrats who preach about accountability and justice suddenly lose their voices when one of their own is caught in a scandal. The blatant silence surrounding Hunter Biden's controversies? It was proof of the selective outrage that has driven so many Americans away from mainstream politics. And Whoopi? She looked visibly uncomfortable. Scrambling, she attempted to downplay Hunter Biden's actions, brushing them off as overblown distractions. But Maher wasn't about to let that slide. He turned to the audience, reminding them of a key moment that summed up everything wrong with the system. President Biden himself once declared that no one is above the law, right before pardoning his own son. The irony was impossible to ignore. This was the gut punch, the kind of moment that made people sit up and realize exactly why so many Americans have lost faith in the political establishment. When rules are only enforced selectively, they aren't rules at all. They're weapons.
Against Biden, because I feel, not that I have so much power, and you have some more than I do, obviously, but
I don't know about that.
Are you afraid that you might, influence people who are on the fence?
I think you lose all credibility. I do. I mean, my bond with my audience has always been...
As the conversation intensified, Maher took the gloves off. This wasn't just about Hunter Biden. This was about something bigger, the role of the media in manipulating public perception. Maher called out mainstream outlets for deliberately burying the Hunter Biden scandal before the election, prioritizing their carefully crafted narrative over actual journalism. Instead of reporting the facts, they chose to protect their preferred political figure. And Whoopi's response? Predictable. Instead of engaging with the evidence, she dismissed it as yet another right-wing conspiracy theory. The go-to deflection when facts become inconvenient. But Maher wasn't playing that game. With receipts in hand, he reminded Whoopi, and the audience, that even left-leaning journalists had admitted to suppressing the story for political reasons. This wasn't some fringe theory. It was a documented fact.
My bond with my audience is you're not going to like everything I say, but I'm saying what I really think is true.
Right.
That's Biden just presents as old. It's not really fair.
No.
Because he's almost the same age. Trump is almost the same age.
And once again, Whoopi had nothing. No counterargument. No facts. Just another subject change. Because when the truth doesn't fit the agenda, it's easier to shift the conversation than to face it. That's when the debate took an even broader turn. Maher set his sights on the progressive movement itself, exposing how it has created an environment where even questioning its beliefs is treated as an act of hostility. Disagree? You're a problem. Push back? You're an enemy. But the most damning part? The very people progressives claim to represent, working-class Americans, aren't buying into these extreme narratives anymore. They see through the illusion.
It doesn't present that way. You look at somebody right away, you can kind of just sum them up. I mean, we are not young, but we don't present as old.
Yeah.
Biden does. I saw him yesterday making that speech.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sorry, he's cadaver-like.
But his brain is good. He's still great.
Well, here's what I said, like when I came back after the strike.
When ideology and reality collide, reality always wins. Whoopi refused to acknowledge the shifting political tides, brushing off legitimate concerns as nothing more than right-wing talking points. Maher wasn't about to let her off easy. He pointed out a hard truth. The Democratic Party's sharp leftward shift has alienated key voter demographics, including Black and Hispanic Americans. Instead of listening to what real people actually care about, the party continues to cater to wealthy activists and social media influencers, ignoring the very voters they once depended on. And that, Maher argued, is why their grip is slipping. Reality doesn't bend for ideology. It never has. It never will.
I think a conservative once said to me, what you guys in the liberal side of it don't get about Donald Trump is we don't like him either.
Yeah.
It's just that in this country, it's binary. I mean, gender may not be binary, but politics is. You only get two choices. And the stuff that they are afraid of, they see Donald Trump as a bulwark again.
As the debate wore on, Whoopi Goldberg struggled to mount a solid defense. Time and again, when confronted with Maher's fact-driven arguments, she fell back on vague talking points, emotional appeals, and outright deflections. Rather than addressing the issues head-on, she danced around them, offering rehearsed lines that did little to challenge Maher's points. And this, Maher argued, is the fatal flaw of the woke movement. Its leaders rely on ideological loyalty over objective reality. Their narratives are carefully crafted, but when put to the test, they crumble under scrutiny. Instead of engaging in genuine debate, they demand blind agreement and react to criticism not with counterarguments, but with dismissiveness. And on this stage, under Maher's relentless questioning, Whoopi found herself with nowhere left to run.
To bury the Hunter Biden.
You're talking about the press doing that?
He's saying that's what they did, and that is what they did. They buried the Hunter Biden story before the election because they were like, we can't risk having the election thrown to Trump. We'll tell them.
One of the most revealing moments came when Maher pressed Whoopi on the real concerns of Black and Hispanic Americans. Polling consistently shows that these communities prioritize economic stability, job security, and public safety, issues that progressive activists often sideline in favor of identity politics and culture wars. Maher laid it all out. But Whoopi? Once again she dodged. Instead of addressing the uncomfortable truth staring her in the face, she tried to shift the conversation elsewhere, avoiding the core argument entirely. And that exposed a fundamental weakness of woke politics, the inability to confront inconvenient truths. When ideological commitments are challenged, figures like Whoopi don't engage. They evade. Rather than taking on the argument head-on, they pivot, deflect, and try to change the subject, hoping to avoid the uncomfortable reality staring them down. And when all else fails, they play the victim. With her talking points dismantled, Whoopi accused Maher of twisting her words and making her look bad, desperate to regain control of a debate that had already slipped away from her.
I remember Obama had her over to the White House, like in 2013, to hint, hey, spend more time with the grandkids. That would not be a good idea, Ruth. And she didn't take the hint, and she was not in good health, and she stayed too long, and she ruined her legacy, and got the Supreme Court now to be a pretty right-wing organization. Said Biden shouldn't do that, but ego. He's Dracula. He has crossed oceans of time to be here, and he's not.
But Maher wasn't twisting anything. He was simply holding up a mirror, and Whoopi didn't like what she saw. The problem wasn't how Maher framed the discussion. It was that when confronted with facts, Whoopi had no legitimate response. And what made this takedown even more powerful was the sourk. If Maher were a conservative, Whoopi could have dismissed him as just another right-wing pundit. But he's not. As a lifelong liberal, Maher has the credibility to call out the excesses of the progressive movement from within. His refusal to conform to ideological purity tests has made him a pariah in some circles, but it's also earned him the respect of those who still value critical thinking over blind loyalty.
That stuff is a lot closer to the home. It's like my kid is coming home from school, and they're not allowed to tell me if they're transitioning. The school is going to take the side of the kid over the parent. Stuff like that. There is a lot of crazy stuff on the left. This book, there's stuff that each side is going to like.
And the most devastating part, Maher didn't even have to raise his voice. There was no shouting, no dramatic outbursts, just calm, precise dismantling of Whoopi's arguments, one after another. With every counterpoint, she had fewer places to run. By the end, she was visibly shaken, resorting to vague rebuttals that did nothing to restore her credibility. But this wasn't just about Whoopi Goldberg. It was about something much bigger. This debate reflected a broader shift in American politics, one where more and more people are waking up to the contradictions and double standards of the woke movement. Maher, once celebrated as a liberal icon, has now become one of its most vocal critics. Not because he changed, but because the movement abandoned its principles.
The term woke, and you said that woke is what was sort of ruining everything, and I know that you're...
No, I didn't say ruining everything. I said that's why Trump could get reelected.
That's why Trump could get reelected. So the term woke has been, in my view, co-opted by the right, and weaponized and bastardized. And so I was surprised to hear you use the term because historically, as you know, because I think you're quite brilliant, that woke is a word used by the Black community to note that we must be aware of social injustice.
This debate with Whoopi Goldberg wasn't just a clash of opinions. It exposed a deep fracture within modern liberalism. Maher represents an older generation of liberals, those who champion free speech, rational debate, and real-world problem-solving. In contrast, the woke movement has veered sharply toward ideological purity, cancel culture, and performative activism, prioritizing abstract social battles over tangible solutions. And that radical shift has left many traditional liberals feeling politically homeless. The very movement they once supported has drifted so far left that it often seems disconnected from everyday Americans. Maher's critique drives home an uncomfortable reality: the Democratic Party, in its pursuit of progressive ideals, has lost touch with the core issues that voters actually care about. Inflation, education. These are the issues keeping people up at night. Not endless debates over gender pronouns and microaggressions.
Look, I'm not going to defend Donald Trump ever, but I would never say that we should put the swastika on the cap, because I think you can hate Donald Trump. You can't hate everybody who likes him. It's half the country. I don't want to live in that country. I don't want to live in the country where I hate half the country, and I don't hate half the country.
How dare you disagree with me?
Woke activists continue to dominate public discourse, pushing an agenda that feels increasingly detached from the struggles of working-class Americans. And that's what makes Maher's voice so significant. He refuses to toe the ideological line. While much of mainstream media either embraces or fears the wrath of progressive culture, Maher stands firm, calling out contradictions wherever he sees them. His willingness to challenge both sides has earned him critics from all camps, yet it also makes him one of the few mainstream figures still engaging in honest discourse. And that's exactly what makes him so dangerous to the establishment.
That's the answer to the Donald Trump situation, is what's going to get him elected is this woke stuff that a lot of people in this country just don't go for.
Well, one thing that I break with is that you can disagree on candidates, but when one talks about literally upending the entire democracy, that's my heart out. There's not an equal comparison here. So I know you said...
And that's what makes this exchange with Whoopi Goldberg so important. It raises a critical question about the future of political commentary in the United States. As traditional media grows more partisan and ideological, figures like Maher stand out. Not because they take a particular side, but because they refuse to conform. In an era where tribalism rules, Maher's insistence on independent thinking might just be the most rebellious stance of all. His fearless approach to calling out hypocrisy on both sides has made him a rare breed in today's hyperpolarized media landscape. Conservatives and moderates respect his brutal honesty. Meanwhile, progressives, who demand unwavering allegiance, find him increasingly intolerable. He doesn't bend, he doesn't pander, he refuses to play along with the ideological circus. And that makes him a serious threat to the system.
It's not a bad thing, and originally that was absolutely a great thing. Alert to injustice, who's not for that? But words do migrate. Now, I'll use any term you want, because maybe that is a word that's triggering, and so let's not use that word. I don't know, want to call it the super far left? But don't tell me the left had...
the super far right.
But this debate with Whoopi wasn't just a heated clash between two celebrities. It was a seismic shift in political discourse. Audiences are waking up. They're tuning out the tired, scripted narratives of mainstream media and celebrity-driven talk shows, realizing that these platforms exist not to inform, but to manipulate. Instead, they're seeking out raw, unfiltered...
Okay, but we talked about that. I mean, I think we agree about the danger of the super far right, and I can't say it enough. I think they're the bigger threat. But don't tell me that the left hasn't changed. I'm old enough to remember when it was the conservatives who hated the Jews.
Voices, people like Maher, Joe Rogan, and other independent commentators who aren't afraid to challenge the status quo. And that's a huge problem for networks like The View if they keep ignoring reality. If they keep spewing disconnected narratives while brushing off real issues, then they're heading straight for irrelevance. The days of Hollywood elites lecturing the masses without pushback are over. People aren't falling for it anymore. They don't want preachy monologues. They want real, unscripted conversations about the issues that actually affect their lives.
Women have this is a show watched by a lot of women. Women have no rights in this
time. Inflation. freedom of speech. Political corruption. So what happens next? If The View and similar platforms keep doubling down, they'll continue hemorrhaging viewers. And if the woke establishment refuses to evolve, they might just find themselves collapsing under the weight of their own contradictions. Could this moment be the turning point? If the public keeps rejecting performative outrage and ideological purity tests, this could be the beginning of a massive shift in political media. And if they don't listen, Maher's takedown of Whoopi Goldberg might just be the first domino to fall in an even bigger reckoning. This debate, it was just the beginning. If you want more deep dives into the biggest moments shaking up the media and politics, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next.